Welcome in. This is Hype Factor, a fantasy critic podcast for all the fantasy critic enthusiasts out there who just can't get enough talking about fantasy critic. I'm one of your co-hosts, John32, and as always, I am joined by my good friend Marcus. Marcus, how are you doing today, my friend?
I am waking up, John. It is an early morning recording here for me, but I've got my coffee and I am ready to go. Looking forward to getting into things with you and our friends here.
Yeah, different time zones today, many different time zones as we welcome in Zach and Brendan from Blowing Cartridges podcast. How are you both doing today?
Yeah, going well. Thanks, Jon and Marcus. I think we're crossing three different continents and two hemispheres, so we're doing quite well, I think.
Yeah, no, doing good. And unlike you guys and most of your listeners, probably I am freezing my butt off down here. It is rainy and wet and cold, and
I'm wearing a sweater in
pushing
solidarity.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's making me feel warmer by the minute.
Yeah, many different time zones, and as Marcus said, different recording time for us. So we were just really happy to have you here for you both to join us today. We got a really interesting topic that we wanted to discuss. Not only learn about a little bit about you both, learn a little bit about Blowing Cartridges podcast, but also we're going to cover maybe a less than optimistic topic, which is the biggest fantasy critic mistakes and how to avoid them, maybe. But first, let me just take a quick moment. If anybody is in the Fantasy Critic Discord, you will have noticed that Steve has Elite Fusion has put out a update, an announcement that a new website feature is now available, multi-draft leagues. So if you don't know what this is, you can go into the details of the website and start clicking around. But essentially, instead of just drafting once per year, you could actually set up your league to schedule and host additional drafts throughout the year at kind of regular intervals, while keeping all the same kind of teams and publishers. This is like he's set it up as almost like an alternative to the bidding system, which I love as a concept. I know, Marcus, you and I have talked about this where, for those more casual players, let's say, those that are playing on novice level in the game, it can be really tough to keep people engaged, right? And
Yep.
usually a highlight of the year is when everybody gets together, whether in voice chat or whatever, and do a live draft. And so this is a way, if you want, as an alternative to bidding, which you can kind of toggle off and on now in the league settings, you can actually just have the draft serve to allow people to pick up and fill out their rosters. And it almost like mandates that they fill out their roster, which is also an interesting thing. So I thought this was a really interesting update. I'm curious of how much the uptake will be. We'll have Steve on at some point to talk about that. One draft, no changes afterwards idea potentially, but again, people have the customization if they want to have it actually like interspersed with regular bidding to a certain extent. So you can just another layer of customization. Thoughts? We have a first look at multi-draft leagues here. Any thoughts on this before we move on?
I personally think it's great to have a new way of playing, because I think, Fantasy Critic's been around for a while, and we have seen people sort of jerry rig their own, multi-draft leagues through, just doing it off a sort of a spreadsheet and sort of adjusting league settings where they could. So I think it's great to now have it officially. Certainly, I have a lot of chats now with all my leagues to be like, do we want to do this? How do we want to, incorporate it, if at all? It's great to sort of have that sort of potential revitalization of it for some of the leagues where things are getting a bit, I won't say boring, but I'll say they get a little routine maybe when you keep the settings the same year after year after year. So I'm keen to see how it might shake things up next year for some of the ones I manage. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Brendan? Is a person in most of those leagues that I manage?
Yeah, I'm in 4 leagues, and I think 3 of them Zach either manages or is sort of the senior advisor to the manager.
The shadow manager.
The shadow
in
manager.
the background.
I think it's what John said in terms of, I think it will be useful in those leagues that have more like novices, for a lack of a better term, or people that aren't as engaged to participate, to fill out their rosters, because I know, Zach, that over the years in the main league we've both been in, that has been one of the issues, in that some years we've had a lot of people participate, others we've had sort of 5 or 6, because people fall off, and then it becomes difficult to increase that engagement, and people get disenfranchised. I think when bidding happens and they might have been busy that week, or they miss the notifications, and then they think, oh well, I lost out on the chance to get some really big games, particularly I guess this time of year where, well, we've just passed May, June, but when there's all those announcements, and if you're busy during the summer or winter for Southern Hemisphere, you miss out, and you feel like, well, the people that have their thumbs on the pulse and sort of looking at the releases every week or every so often and can jump on those games, those are the ones that will automatically win. So I think in those leagues, when you don't have and I think when you have leagues that are full of, I guess, again, lack of better term, experts that do have their fingers on the pulse, then perhaps the current bidding system is a better way of managing that. But I think, because I think that having a multi-draft system does have limitations as well. It's not sort of, this is the way to perfectly run it. Of course, there is never a perfect way, but I think this is a good option to have.
And more drafting. Drafting is like, pretty universally, I think, looked at as probably the most fun part of the season. So if you can do that a little bit more often, if that is particularly, as you guys have said, if it helps with engagement and keeping people active and interested in playing, because 1 year, that's a long fantasy season. It's a lot. We've talked about this before, John, but like 1 full year, that's longer than any fantasy sports season that people might be coming in playing. So like it can be hard to keep interest up all along, and adding more drafts. I'm interested to see how it plays out, and you said as well, John. Like I'm interested to chat with Steve later on to see how much uptake we actually have with this feature.
And this is live right now. You can even, I believe, you just go into the manage drafts option in your sidebar if you're a league manager, and you can actually do one now. I don't know if you'd want to interfere with your current season, but you could if you wanted to, or if this is something, as Zach mentioned, like people are already doing. So if you need it, it's going to be there. Yeah. And I also think it presents a new challenge to even those that are more locked in, right? Because it doesn't, especially in a private bidding system, you don't have that option to just sneak things through. You kind of have to now compete in a really ranked kind of battle royale for those spots, for those games that you might want to pick up. So yeah, a little bit of a level set, a different type of challenge. Really, really hoping that one of the leagues I'm in might pick up on this next year. I could see one or two of them that are hosted within podcast communities potentially wanting to engage with something like this to just create little moments of gathering by this method. So yeah, interesting. All right, with that, let's get into the topic of the month.
Topic of the month.
Okay, so before we get into fantasy critic mistakes, which thank you both for entertaining that, because that's not an easy one to jump in on. So I appreciate you joining us for that. But first, we want to get to a little bit to know about you both. For those listening that may not be familiar with Blowing Cartridges, I think we want to hear about how you both kind of got into gaming, but also kind of how you started the podcast, and also maybe a little bit about your engagement with Fantasy Critic. So maybe I'll kick us off. Like, why don't you introduce yourselves, but tell us a little bit about Blowing Cartridges. What motivated you to start the podcast? Because it's never an easy feat, as Marcus knows. And maybe what is it about gaming that drew you into that kind of podcast world?
Yeah, I might start if that's okay, Brendan. I'll throw to you. So Brendan and I met online back in the day on a forum that's now defunct called Aussie Nintendo. We're both Australian, if that wasn't obvious already by our accents. When we were children / teenagers, I would say. But then we actually met in real life years later when we both ended up going to the same university, which was quite fortunate. Though Brendan was a year under me, if I think a year or two, 1 year, I'd say.
I think 3. I think
three?
I was because I started. I think the year you finished.
Yeah, I couldn't remember, but I just remember him coming up to me like being, "I'm this guy." I'm like, "Oh yeah," which is not the weirdest way I've met one of those people from the forums back in the day. But anyway, that's not a tale for here. So that's how we met in person, and Brendan was also sort of one of the co-editors of, I guess, the successor site to that Aussie Nintendo called Another Castle, which him and a couple of others ran and did podcasting and, reviews, all the sort of traditional games media coverage stuff while I was sort of doing other things. On I wrote for sites like Go Nintendo, and here in Australia, Rocket Chainsaw. So we both sort of were dabbling as hobbies in sort of covering games in various ways. And yeah, I mean, how I wanted to get into Blowing Cartridges was because Brendan kept bugging me to do a podcast, which is a good segue to him, and why we do what we do.
Yeah, so I seem to recall, I think it was 2018, we started talking about putting a podcast together. As Zach mentioned, the podcast I had sort of been involved with some other mutual friends of ours had tapered off a bit, but we had Zach on a few times as a guest as well, and I was interested in getting back into the field. At that point, I moved over to Edinburgh, United Kingdom, for my master's, so we sort of put that on hold. I returned back to Australia, and then COVID hit in 2020. And like many people, we had a lot of free time on our hands. We were working from home, so it was very early in 2020. We discussed, and I think about March, April 2020, we discussed, well, we have a lot of this spare time now. We're free. Let's finally actually do this podcast we had brainstormed about and sort of had thought about back in 2018. So we just got down and did it. We got some feedback and some advice from some good friends of ours that run the House of Mario podcast, Drew and Bryce at that time. And we just got right into it. For those who haven't listened to Blowing Cartridges at this point, I guess to give the very brief elevator pitch, what our vision for Blowing Cartridges has always been, it's a conversation podcast. It was always the idea for each episode was to really talk about topics that related to the gaming industry, specific games, and just themes around that. And we wanted each episode, and I guess there are some exceptions to that, but as a rule, to really be able to, I guess, exist in a vacuum. We didn't want to do sort of a weekly or fortnightly, this is the latest news or these are the latest games, let's talk about them. We wanted to really talk about more, I guess, not ephemeral, but more topics that will always be around gaming. So we've talked about things like arcade games, short games, online games, sort of preservation of games. It's always been topics like that, or what difficulty in gaming, and sometimes we have looked at specific accessibility, and we have looked at particular games as well. So we try to do a mix of those topics. And the other thing that we've always wanted to do, and I think we've pretty much stuck to, particularly in the last few years when we do record episodes, is that we have a third guest on, or sometimes more than a third guest, but we like to bring in different perspectives. And I guess the idea was always to have someone come in and bring a topic to us. That has happened sometimes. Often we sort of create topics and then think about guests we can bring in, not dissimilar to you two. So I guess that's sort of how the podcast operates. And really, I think to answer your question about what drew me into gaming, I think it's similar to Zach, that we've gamed all our lives. We grew up with, particularly Zach and I as well, Nintendo gaming, and we sort of have never stopped playing games, even though I don't really play games anymore, but I'm still very much involved in and interested in the milieu and the broader gaming landscape. And I do pull out the Switch 2 every now and then and actually do get a chance to play. So that's a very brief synopsis, I think, of Blowing Cartridges. Yeah. It is, in theory, a fortnightly podcast. I think our last episode was the end of May because, I've been very busy, and I think, I haven't really talked to Zach lately, but Zach has also been busy, so yes.
Yeah, life goes on, so yeah.
But I love the format, and just for full transparency for everybody listening, both Marcus and I have guested on Blowing Cartridges, and
we should have said that. Yes,
no, I'm always
and very recently as well. Yes.
Yeah, the podcast ecosystem universe that you mentioned, Drew, and House of Mario. That is something that I think both Marcus and I've engaged with or listened to in the past. So it's just like a small but large community of anyway, it's just a really, really interesting ecosystem. Yeah. Sorry, Marcus, I'll let you.
And I think it's great how it's a global one as well.
Totally,
that's something I've really have grabbed onto, and I think it's a fantastic part of it.
Okay, let's transition now to Fantasy Critics. So I am curious. I have a feeling it was Zach that got into it first, but what is your Fantasy Critic origin story, Zach?
Yeah, I'm gonna make this sound way more impressive than it is. So I started in 2019, and it was off the back of Steve doing his adverts with Easy Allies. Back when he sort of sponsored them through Patreon, and they obviously ended up doing their own league as well. So I started, I think, mid 2019 with basically our core group of friends from our video games club at uni. Though I think we'd all graduated by that time, but either way, we're still all friends. And that was how we got started. I sort of just dragged people into it, really. They, sort of forced them to play with me, and they, I think some of them liked it more than others, and have stuck with me through these, gosh, it's how many years now? 7 years, I guess, which is crazy to think about. So that was good. But then I also found myself pulled into the broader fantasy critic, I guess, community when I joined the Discord. And through that, at some point after winning my home league a few years in a row, Steve tapped me and a bunch of others on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you guys have all won your leagues consistently. I'm setting up like a little league of champions. Do you want to join?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah." So for about 3 years, I think from 2022 to 2024, we had this little league of champions with, people, if you're familiar with the Discord, like Todd Coward, and obviously Steve himself was in it, and a bunch of others that we did until eventually Super League started, and that became a more sensible and also larger league for actually having a genuine League of Champions. Because the reality is, if I look back at those Champion League years, our quality is good, but nowhere near the level of the really top players in Super League. So maybe that's just a proxy of either we were just, didn't understand. Like, we're like Smash Brothers players. You play Smash with your friends, and then you go to a tournament and you realize, oh god, like this is a whole nother level, pretty much. So and through that time, I also roped in a bunch of other communities were involved into giving it a whirl. Like our old internet forum friends, the House of Mario group, they've got one going. So yeah, just sort of found ways to sort of have a little sort of set of leagues running, which has been good. And yeah, Brendan's pretty much just followed along with me, I think, for almost all of them.
Pretty much. I missed the very first one because that was when I was still overseas, and I think for that one you dragged in the people of that the old video game club group we're still involved with has a monthly games club, and I assume that's where it started.
Yeah, correct.
And for just various reasons, I've never been able to go to any of the game club meetings. So I think it was sort of a Christmas party 2019 when Zach was. I think was that the only time you gave out the trophy for winning?
Yeah, ironically, one of the first. I know I didn't win the first time.
Oh no, that's the only one you didn't win.
Yeah, yes. And I made a trophy that said they were the top banana and gave them that. And then I've because I kept winning, and then I'm like, I can't be bothered making myself trophies. But then I have lost since then a few years, so I need to probably get back onto giving people some sort of reward for winning. But yeah.
But yeah, it was from that second year I got involved, and I've really I follow Zach in what leagues to join, and then even this year when he was like, "Oh, you should join one of the Super League divisions, Brendan," and I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." So
yes.
I did.
Yes, if it's not obvious, both Zach and Brendan are also in Super League with Marcus and I. So yeah, I don't know if you guys can decide if you want to give your handles out and that people know where to bother you.
Yeah,
or which league you're
in Super League, in the Discord, I'm Egmond, EWGMOND. I'm currently in Division 2, so I've dropped from Division 1 last year, which again is probably fair. I think I'm more a Division 2 player, maybe even a Division 3 player, but yeah, so that's where you can see me and how I'm going this year. Which at the moment I'm feeling pretty okay. I'll say I won't say good, but okay.
And on Fantasy Critic, I'm Tamazoid, and I'm in Division 9. And I think I'm currently coming third, so it's not too bad.
Nice.
I did some wild things in the draft. Like, I think I drafted Marathon, and I think I was trying to have a psychological game against everyone else in the league. So.
Listen, half my team is orange, right? So let's just... I've got news that is relevant to my own, personal fortunes today. But so maybe just building on that, and maybe as a bit of a segue into our main topic, do you want to talk about any kind of fantasy critic kind of memorable moments for you both? Any kind of like really big wins or huge fails, or something that really shocked you, something that like stands out as a memory, a core memory for fantasy critic for any of you?
So I have two, and they both relate to the main league I'm in with Zach. So the first one is 2020, the first year I was involved in it. I was flying pretty well towards the end of the year. I had drafted Cyberpunk quite highly, and of course, when Cyberpunk first came out, the Open Critic score for Cyberpunk was very high, and then I think over the week plus period, I just kept on seeing the notifications of the score going down, and sort of my overall aggregate score just dropping, and it was pretty demoralizing. And then the second one was 2023, when I mentioned to both you two in the pre-show, but by end of November, I was flying high. I was leading the league. It looked like I was finally going to beat Zach. It was going to be his first defeat since 2019, but I had picked Modern Warfare 3 quite late. I had one spot left, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a solid sort of mid 70s, maybe an 80. It will butt me ahead. And as we all know, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, I think, has a score of about 65 on Open Critic. So it absolutely tanked my score, and I lost. I came second, or even maybe third. I think it was second to Zach in the end. So Zach got to maintain his supremacy. So and I sort of looked over my results briefly before the show started. In terms of massive wins, I think the highest scoring game I've ever drafted or picked in Fantasy Critic has been was last year 2 years ago, Final Fantasy Rebirth, I think, which sits on its 97. So I think that's, and I was drafting first that year in that league. So I think that's sort of my biggest win so far.
Foreshadowing for next year. Interesting. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I was having a think. To be honest, the biggest ones that stand out are my mistakes, which we'll get into. So I don't really have anything else, because I was just having a look. I mean, probably it's just like the 1 year. I think it was having a look at 2022, where I managed to get all my games released, and they all at least had a positive score, which actually I find is really hard to do. So I think, that's a bit of a highlight year for me. But other than that, there's some blemishes in all of them when you look through. So and they stick with you the most, the mistakes. So yeah, I'm keen to get into them and air my dirty laundry.
Cool. Marcus, do you want to like tee up the mistakes topic before we jump into it?
Yeah, so we're not experts, but we definitely, probably have a little bit more experience than the average person playing Fantasy Critic. And, I think over the years we've noticed mistakes that people make, or that we've made ourselves in the leagues that we play in. And we wanted to kind of do a little PSA, a little bit of a kind of a helpful episode to discuss some of those mistakes, so that hopefully, dear listener, you can avoid these mistakes going forward and help you in your league. So I think what we'll probably do is we'll each introduce a mistake, and then we have a little bit of a discussion on it. So we've got lots to draw from. Hopefully we'll get through probably half a dozen, maybe a few more. And yeah, that's I think what we're going to do here today.
Yeah, we have a few episodes that Marcus and I have done, which we consider like evergreen, like things like, how to prep for a draft and, like waiver wire type stuff. I feel like this is another one of those, Marcus, where it's like, the mistakes probably aren't going to shift too far. So it's going to be another evergreen episode that could help people along the way. So I'll kind of guide us along. Marcus, maybe you kick us off with the first one, and then we'll kind of go around the wheel here. How about you start us off?
Sure. So lots to choose from just to get us going. But the one that I've mentioned this before on the show, and I think like it is something that people should keep in mind. And you hear it on almost every draft that I've participated in. And it's kind of like this idea of being, let's say, satisfied with a mediocrity and satisfied with scores in the 70s. And every year I always hear somebody say, at least I won't lose points with this game. That is not a very good mindset to have, in my opinion. Basically, I've done some calculations, not recently, but a little while back, about what, like, almost the average score of a game that's on somebody's roster. It'll vary a little bit in the leagues, but typically it's kind of in that 8 range, high 70s, kind of that 80s range. And so you shouldn't be looking at it from a perspective of, will my game still get positive points? Because if the game that you have on your roster gets a 72 or a 75, that's still less than the average game that is on somebody's roster, and it's probably getting you behind the 8 ball a little bit. You should be only looking to add games that you think are going to get 8 or above, or high 70s or above, like at the minimum. And you shouldn't be kind of thinking, oh, I got positive points, I'm okay. Like that's not the right mindset. And I think that is something that people, just because of the idea that it's positive points, it's okay. It's, if you want to win your league, you shouldn't be looking to add games that are going to be, you're fairly confident are going to be kind of in the mid 70s, low 70s range, just because it gives positive points. So that's my first one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if the line was at an 80, set at 80 rather than 70, like it's just like that's almost how you have to have your mindset. And it also protects you a little bit from a game scoring poorly and then kind of dropping you,
Yeah,
right? And kind of
because
like, so
no, I think I was going to say the same thing. That it's that for what John said, it's that buffer that if you think it's going to get an 80, but it drops 5 points, then well, you're still fine. Like it's in that 70 range, and that's what you shouldn't be targeting. But it's not like sometimes I think I have fallen into this mistake of I can't think of games off the top of my head for specific examples, but I've definitely picked something that I thought, well, at least if it's worse, it will sort of scrape a 70, and then it does worse than that, or I think, it's probably mid to high 70s. I'll pick it anyway, and then you get like a 71, and well, that hasn't really given you any points, so it's a waste of a spot.
It's almost like the default scoring in fantasy. I think people would grasp what I'm trying to say better if you lost points for games that were below 80 instead of below 70. Like that's basically what you should be looking at. That 80 should be the line, not 70.
Because that's the thing. Ultimately, if you want to win at the end of the day, scores of 70s are not going to get you that win. The way the system's set up is it's not really adding any points to your total.
Yeah. I think the only time you can ever consider it is if it's like super late in the year, you have a very clear understanding of where you lay, and you're like, I just need 5 points or something like that, and that's where I wouldn't say you target, because as you said, you need the buffer, but that's the only time where I'd maybe go like, there's not much left. I need any points I can get, because maybe it's October. You're looking for something to pick up, and the pickings are slim by then. And you might be like, if I can just get 2 or 3 points, that gets me over the line. But yeah, for the majority of the year, you don't have enough information to really go off to do such a calc that you only need X amount of points to get the win or avoid relegation or whatever it is that your target that's achievable at that point of the year.
Yeah,
well, that's a good point, and maybe especially relevant this year.
Yes,
in my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, Brendan, why don't you go next?
I don't believe it's on the list we have, but I think for me, one of the biggest mistakes I've made at times is relating to counter picks, and I think it is really,
that's a good one.
being too aggressive on a counter pick can really tank your season, in terms of sometimes you think, well, for example, last year, if you had counter picked GTA 6, it was a neutral thing. It didn't score any points. You're fine. But I think, been too smart for my own good, and I've thought like, yes, this game is being backed by, like, let's take Kenner Bridge of Spirits. I saw Kenner Bridge of Spirits. Sony were backing it hard, and I thought, well, it's an unknown developer. They haven't developed any game. It's a new developer. They hadn't developed any games. Yes, they had people of experience, but it was a bit of unknown. I wasn't sold personally on the trailers I had seen of it, so I thought, I'm going to take a gamble and counterpick it. That was not a smart move. I lost points on that. And I think it's, in terms of counterpicking, is that, I guess, nebulous part of Fantasy Critic, in that if you play it right, if there's people in your leagues that are a bit inexperienced or make mistakes, you can really, I guess, take advantage of that, and you can pick games that you've assessed that, oh, well, there's no way, like, this is definitely a flawed game. It's going to score under a 70. That, I guess, that is probably rarer in some of the more experienced leagues. In those ones, you're really picking things that you're betting on the release date of, well, it doesn't have a release date, or the release date is too fuzzy and you think it's going to be pushed back. You're going to lock that in so you don't get affected by negative counter picks. But I think that really thinking about what you counter pick and just being aware of the pitfalls of that system is something you do need to take into account. And also, you don't want to leave the counter picks too late, conversely as well, because sometimes I think some people do take that strategy of, well, I'll wait until things sort of get knocked out by release date and that sort of thing, and then counter pick things. And that's not always a sure strategy as well, because, well, people might beat you to that counter pick, or people might be able to drop that choice before you can counter pick it, or all manner of different variables, and then mean that, well, you can end up in, I guess, November, December, and you still have some counter pick slots that you need to fill. And yes, often I've been in leagues that by that time people have picked things that have fallen out of the year, and you can just counter pick that and you're safe. But it's not always a sure bet.
I like this one a lot. Sorry, John. But I think like GTA 6 has been counterpicked in every league that I'm playing in. I think people that have done that so far this year, we're still a few months out from release, but things are looking like this is going to hit. GTA 6 is going to hit this year. So like there's big games. Wolverine was counterpicked in at least one of the leagues that I'm in, and it's like those are not good bets at come draft time. Even if we have just a nebulous 2026, if the game has already been pushed, like I personally avoid counterpicking any game that has the potential, if it comes out, to get like 90. Like it's just not worth it, right? And it happens. It happens in every draft every year. Somebody makes these big bombastic counter picks, and I don't think that that's a really good strategy. So I think that's a good one, Brendan.
Like, actually, one of the big mistakes, if we go back to that, I made last year was in a league. I counterpicked Mario Kart when you could still pick it as a unreleased game, because I think I was making the bet that was very early in the season. I thought, oh, well, they are going to launch. I don't think they will launch with Mario Kart, so I'm going to counterpick it. And then I think a couple of months later, they're like, we're launching with Mario Kart. And I thought, oh, well, that's my season in that league finished. And, well, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you all. The other thing with counter picks, I think depending on the league you're in, I think people get a bit too focused on, I got to get it and will not release. And like, that's great if you can get one. And again, in some leagues, there are will not releases aplenty, like you don't have to stress. But that's not always the case. Like in Super League this year, I'm pretty happy with my two counters I had so far, being Romeo's a Dead Man and Darwin's, which both I knew were coming out. But I'm happy to cop a -4 and a -5 in the context of like the caliber of games that were picked in the league. Like it was just too risky. Like there were too many things where like if they come out, they're at least an 80 in my mind. Like I'd rather cop the guaranteed mid 70s, could have dipped to like below, because Suda, for example, is a mixed bag at the best of times critically. So, like I think just always evaluate like what's on the playing field and what's good in context of that. And sometimes go, hey, maybe I should just take this like probably mid game, even though it's definitely coming out, and not stress too much about waiting for hopefully seeing some signs of a delay on a different game.
Yeah, really good suggestion. We're going to talk more about counter picks when we get into the news and stuff too. So we're going to circle back to that. Zach, why don't you go next?
Yeah. One of the things I drum on about a lot is if you have a league with specific special slots that only have one or a very limited number of like tags or labels that can go into it. And where I made this mistake first was in that original Champions League back in 2022. We had a yearly installment slot, which in hindsight, there's also a good lesson actually for league managers to really think about why would you have these slots to begin with. But when you only have one tag, it means you only can put a thing with that tag in, which I know sounds obvious, but it's quite important to think about. And so it became pretty obvious to me at some point during the draft, like, hang on, how many yearly installments are there? And then you look it up and they're like, not many. And when you look at the list, you're like, this is pretty dire. And all of it, because I think the way most of us take a draft is we're like, what's the game that's going to score me the most points? But when you think about a special slot, you have to change your thinking a little bit, because you have to think more in the context of, like, what's the average score going to be for that slot for everyone else? And how do I make sure I beat that average? And it became pretty clear with this yearly installment, there are only like a handful of things that are going to get any points, let alone a good amount of points. And so I scrambled at the time and grabbed NHL 23, which got me 70. So just a zero was not anything, versus a couple of people got some sevens, a couple of people got some threes and fours. Most people got zero because they just couldn't fill it. And that's kind of where you have to think about that. Those points might be the thing that get you over the edge. And I always warn people, particularly now with unannounced slots, because I think that is a real trap where people forget not many things get announced during the year and then come out in the year. Like Nintendo are good at that. Maybe some indies every now and then, but most of the time you can't, like, something is announced a year or at least a calendar year before it releases. So if you look at the average return on an unannounced slot, it's going to be like closer to zero than it is to 10 or 20. And so if you can get anything in there that gets you points, sometimes it's worth going, maybe I just quickly fill this slot, even though it might be a lower scorer than something I could get in my regular slots. At least it means I'm getting something of some value in a slot where most people are getting maybe nothing or a very low scoring game just due to whatever that tag is. And for the record, the next year they dropped the yearly installment tag because I think we realized it didn't function as we wanted it to, and it was actually quite bad.
So this is an interesting one for me. I actually love this one because it's directly relevant to one of my main, like my first league and my whatever you want to call it, main league. I think this is a really insightful one, more maybe for those in like those mature, because I do think like that filling a spot, a roster spot based on a specific tag. I think I've seen that only in more quote unquote mature leagues. I do think it adds an element of difficulty, like if you want to talk about scaling difficulty. And I think your point, Zach, here is perfectly made, which is like, to me, in that league, whether it's the draft or the waiver wire, at least this year, I felt like I was more in tune, overvaluing potentially. I don't. That sounds negative, but overvaluing filling the difficult spots with things that you know are going to land and hit. So, like for example, in one of my leagues, we have like to fill new gaming franchises slots. We have to fill a DLC slot and a expand and a remake slot, and you can only have the one for some of those. And obviously, like uh, it's incredibly important that whatever you're putting in there is not going to hurt you. But also, like if you're forced to fill a slot and there's very slim pickings, then it becomes really challenging. So in that same league, there's only like you only get one drop of something that's known, and I've used that now to kind of like replace my remake, because I just like I really wanted to shore up that position. Like if something happens on the regular gaming slot, I feel like I can pivot and address it as necessary. But those technical pickups are incredibly important. And this is kind of like, we've had this kind of listed, like knowing your league rules, right? Your individual league rules, both in terms of like those tags, what's permitted, also how many drops are you enabled, like if you do want to make a change like that. Like I had to be very keenly aware I'm not going to be able to make many other moves now. So I'm calculating that into that overall decision point. But that's like just part and parcel, I think, and a really good one to highlight. I'm biased though, I'm that's directly relevant and targeted at me. So I really like that one.
It's very reminiscent of fantasy football for me, from years gone by,
Yes.
at least. With
Yes.
I'm thinking of, I don't know if it's the case still because I haven't played fantasy football in years, but like tight ends, you want to get your
Perfect.
good tight
Yeah.
end early, because and it's worth kind of not reaching, but like drafting that tight end early, because there's only usually a couple of them that are going to score really well
Yeah.
or be good consistent point producers, and because there's just not a lot left over, and it's kind of the same with some of these slots. Like you want to get the good one, and it's worth reaching a little earlier.
American football.
American football.
American football.
Yes, 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 yes.
Mm.
It's top of
So
mind lately. So.
yeah, so I don't know. It's a really good point. I think like I've only played in a league with dedicated slots once before. Last year with
Okay, I was
Carpool,
going to ask that.
John, and DLC was one of those slots that
Yeah.
was pretty slim pickings. And I think I had Chained Echoes, if I'm remembering correctly, which I didn't go particularly early. And I think I missed out on some potential better ones earlier. And I think like had I been thinking in this way, and I don't think I realized how thin good solid DLCs were during the draft. And I think like just if you have those slots, like as Zach and John have said here, like take a look at the landscape of the games in those categories, and if it feels thin, it's probably worth reaching a little earlier in a draft or adding those games sooner rather than later, because you won't have much to pick from if you wait too long.
Yes, and I think that's a good point when it comes to remakes and remasters, in that that can be a really tricky slot in terms of sometimes remakes and remasters are, I guess, shadow dropped or announced with a very short lead time, which can make it difficult to grab. But then sometimes you can, I guess, take that as a given and think, well, I'll keep the slot open because something big is going to be announced, and sort of, if you sort of, I guess, get yourself tied up in a knot because you think, well, for example, Nintendo has gaps in their release schedule. Surely they're going to drop something in this gap, and it might be a remake, remaster. And I know from their ones it'll be easily an 80 plus. I'm going to leave the slot open, and then when that doesn't happen, as you three just said, you're stuck. You can't get anything. And I think there was a league that recently, maybe last year, where I was in a similar position. I think I just pick something that I knew was going to release in November, and I think it was a sort of mid-70s remaster, but I thought at that point, well, the slot's still open, I need to fill it with something, like what Zach said for the early response about one of the other mistakes. Sometimes you do just have to fill it, and it's better to get that 4 or 5 points than nothing. But if I had filled that spot 8 months previously, I probably would have, again, remake remasters are one of those ones where I think the average is probably higher in terms of the return on those, because you are generally, the games getting remastered and remaked and that people pick are the ones that are those memorable games that are going to get higher scores.
Yeah. And I think it's also a lesson for league managers around, is that actually the behavior you want? Or is it better making like slots with a few tags so there's a bit more of a pool? Like, just do a something slot, give the whole gambit of remaster, remake, so there's a bit more flex for people. But if you love this dynamic that we're just talking about of like, do I fill my whatever now or do I just do whatever? That's now you can think about how you might use this in your leagues.
Well, I guess what I like about the league you run, the main one we're in, Zach, is that those flexi slots, you can always just put a normal game in them as well.
Yeah.
So there's that extra layer of, well, if, for example, for the remake remasters, you probably want those because they'll score higher. But if you're in a position where you really don't see anything releasing in the slots, you can just go with a generic game and you're not going to get caught out.
I think it's a good prioritization reminder, right? Like if you're in a draft situation and you have two games that are what you think have the same kind of floor or same kind of, potential output, that's where the fantasy football comparison that you made, Marcus, comes in, where, it helps me prioritize one over the other, right? Like I may not like a certain DLC compared to like another sequel that's coming out, but in that situation, I know that I'm probably better off prioritizing one over the other because I can make up the other points. I may not be able to make up the DLC points. So, very good one. Very good. You guys are all picking like really like sophisticated. I'm going to go with something more basic. The one that like everybody knows, but maybe some of our new listeners that are new to Fantasy Critic don't. And that's really just like the age old story, which is there's a lot of people that come into the leagues and they do the draft overexcited and then fill their roster as soon as possible, which, you know, there's a tactic there, but I've rarely seen it work out, at least in my years of playing. And I know when I first started, it was something that I was very concerned about. I was like, you know, I had the same thought process, which is like, you know, very few games are going to, you know, be dated, and I'm going to be stuck here trying to fill a roster. So I really, and I didn't want to compete with others around bids. So I'm like, I'm going to fill it as soon as I can to just make sure I get some points. Rarely successful, never. I don't think I've seen that work out for someone to win. And so that's just a reminder and a warning. Just like, again, just don't fill your roster all the way. I'm always an early fan of kind of like, you know, uh, post draft waiver wire pickups in the ones or twos of things that you might want to just like corner the market on, but not blowing your budget, and just wait, be patient a little bit, especially when you're in January, February, to see what comes with regards to Summer Games Fest and the rest of the year. Um,
It's
yeah,
it's
pretty
a long
straightforward one.
season, you know. So
It
like,
is.
when because I totally agree with this one, John. I mean, I think like we see it again in every virtually every league that somebody will go in and just uh, either spend all their budget or at least basically fill all of their roster right after the draft. Like it happens pretty frequently, and at least in the leagues that I
Yep.
play in, and you're creating some additional like level of difficulty if you want to try to win that way. Like it's so much harder in January to know everything that's coming out and what they're going to score. Like then if you wait until June or later in the year, then you have more information, right? And so don't make it harder than it needs to be. The season's long, you got lots of time. You'll still get, sometimes it may mean that you're going to potentially miss out on some things. That's okay. There's lots of time to be able to make up what you need. Like it's a long season. Give yourself the best opportunity to kind of like make decisions based on more information, and usually time helps with that. So don't rush.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, probably true every year, but even like this year, just for recency, like say in May, there's probably a few dozen games, particularly indies, that are all like of a similar level of information where like you could believe all of these could or could not come out this year, and they all could or could not be okay. And then all of a sudden you hit June and we get Summer Games Fest and all those events, and suddenly that list of games that are likely to come out this year is dropped dramatically because you finally got those dates. But before then, they've probably had a similar amount of trailers, a similar amount of communication, similar amount of demos. There's really would have been no way, unless you had a direct in line with the developers, to know which ones were going to land and which ones weren't. So unless you just got super lucky, and played your cards incredibly well, and just happened to pick the ones that all got, 2026 dates, probably in September, given that's where every game's coming out. But you probably made a few bad calls of stuff that's been radio silence since June, and that would have me concerned, or confirmed actually, yeah, we're going to just do it next year, and you've now either got to drop it or you're stuck with it depending on the settings of your league. So yeah, it's definitely worth holding out a little longer. Wait for a few of those big events, particularly mid-year, and just sort of at least do a vibe check then on stuff. And even if that means you pay a little bit more money, I mean that's the point, right? You want to save a bit of cash and use it when you need to in times like that.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing is like, even if you're in a league with the settings that allow you like unlimited drops, right? So there is value in
Hmm.
kind of filling up your roster right after the draft, because you can hold those spots without penalty, as long as they can't be counterpicked. Like that's again going back to league rules. You kind of have to like know where you stand. But even still, like, you know, blowing money on things that have a very low likelihood of coming out, you kind of still have to be mindful of that, because especially in a league with multiple drops, people are going to be able to be active throughout. You're going to have to be competing with them for pickups. So you kind of do need to save your budget a little bit and be a bit more tactical with how you're spending those waiver
Yeah,
wire dollars. Yeah.
exactly. Unless you're really going for low bids to try
Yeah.
to, I guess, be overly strategic and think, well, I'm really confident this game is coming out and no one else agrees with me, so I'm going to try to get it cheap and then ride it. at the end of the year. But again, I think that's a very risky move, and you probably don't want to be making those risky moves that early, because if you did that, let's say you pick GTA 6 in, I don't know, 2014. I'm 2024, not 2014, 2024, and someone, of course, will then like, oh, no way this is coming out now. I'm going to counter pick it. And I think it's a do not release. And well, they would have been right. So I think that's the pitfall of filling your roster early with games that sort of don't have hard release dates. And I think the other to what you mentioned as well, I think I fell into it the first time I played Fantasy Critic, and then I think I didn't completely fill the roster, but I filled most of it pretty early. And I think part of it was, so I don't have to be managing this the entire year. And of course, well, that is one way to play, but then you're not going to score very, very well, because if you're grasping at games that have release dates at the start of the year, you're going to inevitably pick some things that, well, what Marcus mentioned earlier, are the games that will score lower. You're probably your mid 70, low 70 games. So I think that year I still picked up points for nearly all the games I picked, but I had a lot of sort of low to mid 70s stuff.
Well, the good news is that I hear that there's a new feature for managers out there. If you want to create a multi-draft league, where that might address some of these concerns, Brendan, that both you and I faced when we first started. So, just a thought for everyone out there. Okay, so just in the interest of time, maybe we'll go around the horn again, but we'll just go, some other maybe not as big mistakes, but stuff that we still have on our minds. Marcus, I'll go with you, and we'll just kind of go around the horn a little bit here.
Yeah. So just to quickly add this one, I think like sometimes I see people adding games that purely because it's like something that they're super keen on. And I think like we always talk about trying to remove our own personal bias as much as possible. Like I'll give the example. I may be the only person out there that I've heard that isn't super interested in God of War Laufey. And does that mean I'm not going
others.
to... There's others. Does that mean I'm not going to add it to my fantasy team? Absolutely not. That'd be one of my top picks probably for next year's draft. My interest level has very little bearing on the teams that I want to add. Try to separate your personal interest from the games, and conversely, games that like you haven't heard of, things that you may not be interested in, things that you are really interested in. Take a look see what else is out there, what other people are saying about the game before you jump and add that to your team. Try to remove your personal bias, your personal interest level out of your decision making on whether or not to add a game onto your team.
Yes, and don't always trust, I guess, publications that are very based on a particular niche that you're also involved in, because they might hype a game up to a degree that general review publications won't. But then, of course, conversely, sometimes if it is in a particular genre where there's not going to be much reviews and the only people reviewing it are those enthusiasts, then you sometimes have a back catalogue of games you can draw on that other people in your league won't, because they just won't be aware of them. But that's not necessarily... That can be a risky move. And I think actually the one I'll quickly bring up, which is related to it, because you mentioned God of War, is I think one mistake people can make is it's not always a sure bet. And past performance isn't an indicator of future performance, but do check out and think about developers and not just what the franchise is or the IP is, because, well, God of War Ghost of Sparta, isn't that what the name was called this year? I counterpicked that in Division 9 of Fantasy Critic, and I did very well in that counterpick because it's sitting at a 65 on OpenCritic, because it was by quite a prolific... Well, it was co-developed with Sony Santa Monica, but the lead developer was quite pretty much a prolific sort of studio that releases a lot of games, and I think as a whole their games don't review that well. So, and that game had particular issues as well that I think there were some signs of it from some of the previews and what was shown, but I think some people did still pick it because, well, all God of War games do pretty well, that it's probably going to be 70, 80s. And I think some people fall in that trap as well with Nintendo games. They think, well, Nintendo publishes games, they always do pretty well. There's never a sort of a sub-70 Nintendo game. You're pretty safe picking first-party Nintendo games. But, well, as Zach and I know quite well from our Nintendo fandom, not all Nintendo games are equal. If you had picked Drag and Drive last year, you probably were regretting picking Drag and Drive.
Yeah, 100%. And I'd say Nintendo's a hot area where I always see people wanting to put Nintendo games on their roster just because it's Nintendo, and it's like it's not always a good idea. It's not. Yeah, there's a lot of mid in the Nintendo space, and there always has been. It's not a new or old phenomenon. You go through for decades, and they've had low 70s, high 60s pop up almost every year or every second year at a minimum. So it's yeah, I
They're
definitely
putting
think that's a good tip.
they're putting out something once a month, so I mean it's bound to happen eventually. So,
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Zach, what
and
about you? Anything else in terms of mistakes that you want to highlight?
I don't know how to learn a lesson from this, but I'm just going to air my most recent stupid mistake, which was I think in the House of Mario Discord. I followed the data and the history. I was like, Dave the Diver, the past DLC didn't get reviewed enough.
Oh,
It wasn't reviewed very well either. Sorry, not reviewed, but the general reception was bad. And I'm like, if the Yakuza crossover was not enough to get reviews, nothing else will. That was dumb. And then I counterpicked into the jungle.
Ooh.
So that hasn't gone well for me at all. So I guess I don't know if there's a lesson. Maybe the lesson is try and dig a little below the high level data points where you go, well, this is another DLC, and the trend of DLC of this is that, and maybe. I mean, I don't know if there were signs at the time that might have helped me realize Into the Jungle could have been what it is, but there probably were, and I just didn't dig enough to see those before taking that counter pick.
listen, that game has been both drafted and counterpicked in basically every league that I've seen because of that same thing. So I mean, to me, it's almost like I guess the lesson is like the shorthand, right? We're dealing with so many games, probably more than most within Fantasy Critic. I think you're seeing the rosters and games more than most people see, including like game reviewers, because you're just like absorbing all this information. So like the
Yeah,
shorthand is important, but in this case, yeah, it's a risky maneuver. Um, okay, for me, I guess the last flag I would just make. Um, is unlike fantasy football, which we've already referenced, like Fantasy Critic is, I would say, still in its relative infancy in terms of, um, it's only been around since 2019, I think, is the date, and I don't think we've seen everything unfold yet. That's going to like tell the story of what the big mistakes are. I actually think there's a mistake that we're all making right now, or in the course of making, and that is GTA 6. Like we see this behemoth, which I don't think we've seen something like this, where it comes in and like shapes the release schedule for 6 months, both pre and post. And it might even affect 2027. They're saying so. It's essentially upending what we've seen. I think the Fantasy Critic fallout of that is making things are going to be very unpredictable. So you've got top tier early draft, like second, third round draft games that are going to be coming out all at the same time. Reviewers are probably going to be like inundated doing like all these reviews at the same time. I think the indies that are scheduled to come out there are may end up struggling to get reviews depending on, for at least top critic review scores. And so I think there's probably something on the horizon that we're about to all learn an important lesson. I can't tell you what that is yet, but I'm nervous. I'm not thrilled
yeah,
to see what that lesson is. So I think the story of this year's Fantasy Critic season is yet to be told, and yeah, it's going to be an interesting conclusion. We were commenting before we got live here about how like I think that the we won't know, like a lot of times sometimes by August, September who's going to win a league, and I think it's very much the case this year that it's going to be a live situation until maybe October, November, just because there's so many releases around that time. We still have to see kind of what else falls to the wayside. Things are moving up, things are moving back. So, yeah, trying to predict how something like a GTA, or I don't know what would be the equivalent, maybe there is no equivalent in future, but something of that magnitude shifting the entire landscape. I think going back to the start of the season, yeah, we didn't know for sure it was going to land, but I may have valued things that were set to release in the first 6 months a little bit more had I thought about this in terms of what it was going to look like. So,
I'm
yeah,
curious, as a bit of an aside, does anybody own GTA 6 in any league that they are playing in? Because I do not.
I do
Brendan
not
does.
I
either.
do.
Yeah.
I think there was one league where I had first pick of the
Nice.
Okay.
draft, and I guess first pick of the draft 2026. When I was looking at it, I was like, comparing it to 2025 and previous years. Well, like the one I took Rebirth in. I was just thinking, what games can I pick that I think will score the highest? And I thought, well, I'll take a gamble on GTA 6.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, listen, after it slipped last year, I think, you know, it was okay. It was
yeah.
okay as a first rounder this time around. I think you're going to be rewarded for it. I'm just, yeah, we'll see how the rest of the industry fares after that
Yes.
comes out. Um, all right. Well, thank you both for indulging us with the kind of fantasy critic mistakes, and I'm really happy that you're able to stick around for the rest of the show as we kind of go through the news and other segments. It's going to be, I think, a lot of fun.
Let's get into the news.
Okay, so the news. Let's start with Steam Next Fest, the summer Steam Next Fest. I've pulled together a bit of a list based on what I've been reading. I haven't had actual time to download and play some of these demos, but I thought these are kind of the ones that keep coming up and up in multiple areas. Some are actually affecting the waiver wire because they have dates. Maybe I'll run through these quickly and then invite everyone to either comment on these or anything else that they may have seen circulating around Steam Next Fest. So, Valor Mortis. This game does have an October 13th release date. It's been kind of getting some positive hype around Steam Next Fest, and you'll see that later reflected in increased pickups off the waiver wire. Virtue and a Sledgehammer. This is a game that I have counterpicked because I didn't think it would come out this year, but this game looks like it's doing quite well in terms of critical reception and potentially, I think, even user reception. So, very concerned about that personally. Still no date. About about fishing, this is an interesting one. An atmospheric mystery fishing game. I've heard this talked about in a couple different podcasts. Marcus, you added in that it's the Arctic Eggs dev. So just an interesting one here. Fractured Blooms, cool looking game. This is the same publisher that did Doki Doki Literature Club. So
Mhm.
again, one that's getting a little bit of hype for its kind of creepy vibes. Desktop Explorer, which I think we've talked about before, and one that I'm truly interested in. Um, Mortal Shell 2 did get an August 20th release date, which I think is relevant. That's in a number of leagues that I'm in. I really like this next one. Penguin Colony, developed by Origami Digital and published by Fellow Traveler, a narrative cosmic horror game. Very interesting, but you're a penguin. So I don't know how that's going to work, but great. This next one, Order of the Sinking Star, was drafted in a bunch of leagues I was in. It still doesn't have a date, but this is a puzzle-based game from, was it the, not Binding of, I can't remember, the developer I remember has very high pedigree here in the puzzle
It's
space.
isn't it The Witness and
Maybe
Braid?
it's a Witness. Yeah,
Pretty sure
and
it's Jonathan Blow. Yeah.
Mm.
yeah, it looked weird when it was
Yeah.
being drafted. I was like, meh. And now the reviews have been, or previews of people that have gotten hands on, been quite high. And the last one on this list, Mistfall Hunter. This one is a third-person dark fantasy extraction RPG, but has, at least according to the data points I saw, the highest number of wish list increases since it went as part of Steam Next Fest, but no date. So that's a long list, but I felt it was worth calling out because some of these are Fantasy Critic relevant at this time. Some may become Fantasy Critic relevant in the next little while. Virtue and a Sledgehammer probably picked up in most, if not all, leagues already. But any thoughts about this list or Steam Next Fest generally?
I can start. I would 100% agree with Virtue and Sledgehammer. I think that of all of the games that we've talked about or that you just mentioned here, if I'd be curious actually to know what the ownership of it is. But it's definitely taken in all of my leagues. But yeah, the buzz around this game is fantastic. If it is able to hit this year, I think it's going to score really well. I'm also intrigued by Penguin Colony. I'd like to see a date, but yeah, I think it has a potential to score well. And the other one about fishing, so that one's a little Arctic Eggs. I At least the last time I had looked, didn't have an open critic score, but it had over 1,000 overwhelmingly positive user reviews on Steam. So very kind of well-regarded game, but didn't quite make it into the kind of like the bigger top critic kind of review scores. So About Fishing seems to maybe be a little bit more, still kind of got that Arctic Eggs vibe. I played Arctic Eggs for my podcast, Tiny Game Chronicles, last year. So it seems maybe a little less weird than Arctic Eggs, but still kind of weird. And so could be something to look at. I also have heard other podcasts talk about it, so people seem to be excited about that one. So those are the three that I have on my radar from the ones you talked about, John.
Before I pass it to Zach and Brendan to weigh in, I'll just say that Virtue and a Sledgehammer, according to the FC site, 2.8% published, 24% counterpicked.
Oh my goodness, 2.8%. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Oh
it.
wow.
So
Go out and get
apparently
that
we're in
one.
leagues where indies are really
Yeah.
favored. But if so, there you go. If you are out there, you might want to consider picking this up, even though it doesn't have a date, and continue the thread here. Anyway, Brendan and Zach, anything else to offer on Steam Next Fest?
Yeah, I'd be very tempted by Order of the Sinking Star just because of Jonathan Blow being involved.
Yeah, I was just gonna say some of our friends have played the demo, and from what they tell me, it's got the sauce, the Jonathan Blow
okay.
magic. Yeah,
Yeah, I was surprised. It didn't look like it to me when it was first shown, and like I was like, oh, it looks like. But then from everybody that's actually gone hands on, I'm like, oh boy. So I mean, listen, if it comes out this year, it might already be gone. If it gets slipped into 2027, it's a good kind of reminder for people to keep on their watch lists for sure.
This was first revealed at the Game Awards, I think, last year, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that was probably partly why because I agree with the pedigree. I think that, everything we're hearing of people that are playing the demo, it's just whether or not it still hits this
Comes
year.
out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but when it comes, I think it will score well too.
Yeah. I think the only thing I see people speculating on is like, what I'm about to say is all opinion. Please do not take it any other way. But Jonathan Blow, as a person, since his two biggest hits of The Witness and Braid, has again, I guess, shown who he is as a person in social media, and not everyone likes that.
Yeah, he's kind of a dick, I think. I mean,
that's effectively what my opinion. But everyone's welcome to have their own.
Of course.
And there's always an element of like, will that play into any sort of review element? I personally, I'm not sure it will, but that would be interesting to see if we do see some people sort of almost sort of talk themselves into reviewing it a little lower, just as a bit of a I don't like you.
I don't think so, because ultimately Fez still reviewed well despite that
Some
developers.
Yeah, but it's hard to remember. Like, maybe you're right. I feel like a lot of that was post it coming out and like Indie Game the movie and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. But either way, it's just we're in an interesting times where I feel like, I mean, you guys have discussed on the show before the rise of like pseudo like protest reviewing and things like AI and whatnot, and how that all plays out. And maybe it won't have any impact here. I kind of feel like it won't, but that's the only thing that makes me go, well, maybe there will be a little, slight smidge drop in points if people just want to stick it to him. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good flag. And we're going to talk about the zeitgeist in like 2 minutes. So it's another little foreshadowing. Okay, other news from the month. There hasn't been too much, but there's been a lot of news, just not Fantasy Critic news. Onimusha moved up to September 4th again. Great, that's a good one. Yay! Get out of the way more for GTA. Ontos, which is a game that many have drafted and had on their leagues, who are looking forward to coming out this year, delayed until 2027. So I think was a potentially a big surprise, including the next one here, Dragon Rampa 2x2, delayed also till 2027. So those are two games that I think a lot of people had on their rosters that were now going to be needing to fill that with something. So
I have Ontos counterpicked in Super League, so I was pleased to see this news. Yes,
congratulations.
Speaking of mistakes, though, I had Ontos in Super League. No one counterpicked it, which is just a massive miss in my opinion for the last few weeks, guys. What are you doing? You let me get a free drop.
Yeah,
just come on.
Calling him out. Calling him out.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to need to fill that spot. And good news, Mortal Shell 2 is dated August 20th. Now, I've seen Mortal Shell 2 picked up a lot on the waiver wire. I know that it's also been drafted in a couple places. The first one didn't do too well, but I think the second one, I'm a little nervous, Marcus, because I've counterpicked this game in another league. I think it was in BFAM League, and because the first one didn't do so well. But this one, I'm getting a little nervous as one of those double A, sequel comes out and blows everybody out of the water, and then I'm screwed situations.
I don't know. I mean, we when we talked about sequels a few episodes ago, I think like it tended to be these double A ones that, if anything, they tended to be worse than
I
the
hope so.
than the original. I don't know. I haven't followed the discourse around Mortal Shell 2 at all, so I don't
It's
know
been
what
pretty
really
positive, I think.
has it. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't be too worried at this point, but then I'm also going on maybe a little less information than you are, John. So
Yeah. Okay, rumor and speculation time. Kotaku had an article out looking at the fresh ratings board leak out of Brazil, talking about Metroid Ravenous. If you've listened to any Nintendo podcasts recently, you've heard about this news about Metroid Ravenous. I've actually been shocked that this has not popped up on the waiver wire. I was looking at my leagues where I don't have limited drops, and I was like, could I fit this and just hold it? I am actually shocked that people aren't putting this. There even NBC has speculated that, you know, this might be one of like the fall surprise games that people didn't have on their list. I don't think that's the case. Like, I wouldn't be putting this in places where it could potentially get countered, or if you have limited drops. But I'm shocked that it's not at least made a bit of an appearance on the, top 10, top 12 kind of waiver wire pickups. Thoughts on Metroid Ravenous, which is a 2D, I guess, sequel or follow up to Dread? I'm
I
asking the
believe
Nintendo
it's
guys,
coming.
Marcus.
Yeah.
Not you.
It's coming this year, I believe.
Wow.
Do you think it is?
That's bold.
No, you're split.
No,
Okay.
I believe it's March next year is my gut feel. Like it's the first quarter game. It'll be like in the September Direct. It'll be maybe the closer, and it'll be an early 2027 title. But with, as you said though, like particularly, if you have an unannounced slot you haven't filled, why not throw it in there? Give it a crack. See if you get it.
Guys, I am very concerned that the reason this got dated and the timing and the speculation, I think this is now. I think Ocarina is locked in for November, and I think Ravenous is like the swap out game if Duskbloods isn't ready.
And
Ooh,
I
that'd be smart.
actually think, for what Zach said, I think Duskbloods is going to be that early 2027 Nintendo game.
Interesting. Well, this is what I mean. Like, I think I think they're just like doing this, and uh, depending on where, I think they would rather had Duskbloods come out this year, but if it's not ready or if it's starting to look like it can't perform, then
I'll flip it
I
out.
think they swap it.
Well,
And
for
they do
me, I
something that's
think
gonna
for
get
Dustbloods, the fact is they announced the test for summer, and they still haven't actually announced any details of this summer test, and summer's about to end. And then I know it's sort of not necessarily related, but I see it as related. Where is Elden Ring Switch 2?
Well, that's a few.
Yeah, I thought that was
August?
dated. Is that not
I think
August?
I think it's in August. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Okay,
it's still
Took a while
like
to
that.
get there.
That
Yeah.
took a while. It took a while to get a release date. We'll see what it's like when it's releases.
Yeah.
But I don't see Dustbloods as a 2026 game.
getting back to Metroid, I've heard this mentioned on a podcast that I listened to, but was there any inkling and any rumblings about this game prior? Like, I hadn't heard anything about
a
it.
little bit. Only, I think part of it is just speculation of Mercury Steam hasn't done much aside from one. I think, was it an extraction shooter or some sort of 2D brawler? Or they released some game last year or the year before, but aside from that, they've been very quiet. I think people just, I guess, were connecting dots and thinking, well, Dread did very well. Nintendo have a track record of when external sort of partner developers produce a game and it does well, that they generally will go back to the well and say, well, do you guys want to do another game? Like, that's how Next Level Games produced a lot of Luigi Mansions and other things before they got acquired by Nintendo. Like, there's track record there. So I think it was one of those ones that Zach might torpedo me and say there were particular rumors, but I think it's one of those ones that there were rumors, but it wasn't necessarily direct. I think they fit that rumor category of sort of the logical conclusion is they're working on 2D Metro, but we have no
Yeah.
explicit proof.
Yeah, you could never really say they were like whether they were rumors or people just hedging their bets on what's likely to happen. Because if you look at the Master Games list, there's just 2 games: unannounced next mainline 2D Metro game, which is this, and then untied announced Super Metroid Re something, which has also been rumored. And it's like, well, one of you's wrong. like they weren't going to do both, so.
Yeah.
It seems like it's the new one, which I personally am happier with. A new game's always nice, particularly when we've been getting a lot of re-somethings from Nintendo lately.
Yeah, I don't think they need to remake Super Metro. Anyway, that's a whole other show, but I don't think they need to remake it. It still holds up. Anyway, yes, interesting discussion. I'm very nervous because I also have Duskbloods in Super League, so that's not looking good. It's not looking good in Division 6. Okay, next one. Similar topic. Play Asia. There was I don't know how much I want to stand by this, but Play Asia listed their pre-order entry for Ocarina of Time, and it was listed at $60, which who knows what they know or don't know. Maybe it's just speculation and they're just putting a price point there and it'll change. But if it's $60, the internet feedback is that that's not looking so good for a reimagining take. That sounds like a Star Fox remake take. No one really knows. This is all just rumor and speculation, but I thought it was relevant for at least Champions or Super League.
And my view is I think it will be a Star Fox-like remake. That's just my take.
Killing me.
I just think that's what Nintendo does.
Zach, any alternate takes?
My alternate take is if that's what it is, they probably should have just told us that. Like, I mean, it's a
right.
It was a silly way to tease it. Yeah, you've kind of let people have too much imagination now.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, but then again,
I hope I'm wrong. But for the record, but I just think that's my gut feeling is people are going to be disappointed.
Yeah. No. All right. Yep. Okay. That's Nintendo. Now let's talk about the other two. So obviously there's been a lot of news. We're not going to jump it too far into it, but we wanted to talk about it from a fantasy critic relevance perspective. I'm terming this past Monday, as we're recording this, Xbox's Bloody Monday, which is probably super insensitive, but I had to do it because I just thought it was clever. And obviously there's been mass layoffs. The change in tone from their showcase till now is like breakneck speed. It's done a complete 180 probably from the last time we recorded, Marcus. And so everybody knows they obviously laid off many employees. They've broken ties with a number of studios which they had acquired in the past, and tried to do so, I would say, within like the least messy way possible in terms of selling off those studios and obviously letting them go independent and keep their IP. Like lots of details there. But the question I have for everyone around this table is we still have some significant Xbox first party releases coming out, including a Gears game, a Halo remake, Call of Duty, etc. I don't know if there's more that I've missed. Maybe Fable into 2027. Does what happened this past week and weeks, do you think it starts affecting the zeitgeist of reviewers when they're looking at Xbox first party games? I know it's a loaded question.
I wish there was a better way to quantify this sort of stuff. We talk about this on a regular basis. It feels like, John, is like the zeitgeist and how much, just the feeling around games and kind of the bigger picture, how much that actually reflects review scores. I feel like, this doesn't help. This isn't like a positive development for any of these games, but how much could it potentially negatively affect them? Like, is E-Day going to be like 1 or 2 points less than in this alternate world that this news didn't happen? It's tough to say. I wish I knew. I wish we could say it. It's I think it's certainly possible, these scores come in a little lower than they might otherwise. I feel like on the whole, though, this isn't going to, drop E-Day from an 88 to 81. Like that I don't think is happening, right? But could it in this alternate world, could that 88 become an 86? I think it's possible.
Yeah. Gears
Yeah,
is also the only one that of that list that we talked about is exclusive now, right?
right,
So,
right.
yeah. Any thoughts on this one?
I guess I'll just say that they've cut developers, but they haven't cut their marketing department or marketing budget. So
That's
I
fair.
think the scores will probably still hold. I think it speaks more to I think the cuts and what's happened on Xbox Bloody Monday, for lack of a better term, it speaks more about the future. It speaks
Mm.
more about how a Microsoft developed published games going to perform in next year and the year after, the games that are currently in development that have had their staff cut or their future projects cut down because they don't have as big art departments anymore, or
Whatever it
all
is,
manner
yeah.
of different questions like that. Like how, because that is going to have an impact on all these games. Like, I know there's been some, I was reading last night that I can't remember off the top of my head, but some developer effectively cut a large chunk of their art department. And the question is, well, I know that's right. It was ZeniMax, their
Mm.
online sort of wing, the one that I guess does Elder Scrolls Online, cut most of their art department. It's like, well, I guess Elder Scrolls Online will continue on because their developers are still there, but that doesn't bode well for future expansions unless they hire up again and get more people in when they develop those things. But then I guess the issue with that is you've lost all the institutional knowledge and the people with experience of the
Mm.
IP and the franchise and just the working habits of the studio. So I think it's more, my view is it's more of a long term thing than a 2026.
Yeah.
How is it going to impact
Yeah.
games you've already drafted?
Yeah, I think ultimately I just agree with Marcus. The big there won't be any big shift, but there will be I think a soft shift, and I think it just comes down to like post their Summer Games Fest show. I think people were filled with the warm fuzzies, and they were hoping to carry that positive emotion to an Xbox comeback story. That is, it might technically still happen, but no one's going to
Mhm.
feel good about it happening anymore. If that makes sense, it's like they've become the champion again, but they did it through like some of the worst ways possible. And so I think people will now be more critical, but at the end of the day, most critics are professional enough not to say like a game that's great is less than great. They just might again reflect it in a slightly lower score, but not materially lower.
Yeah, and in a similar vein, can't not talk about Sony. So Sony this week, was it
Mm.
this week? I don't even know. Have disclosed that starting July 1st, no, January 1st, 2028, that they will now be diskless. So that means future consoles, I guess, probably not supporting, at least, I guess that's not confirmed yet, but they won't be producing or selling their games in physical form anymore. They can't tweet out anything without being inundated with thousands, if not millions, of
Mm-hmm.
attack posts, which, interesting response tactic by the gaming community, but they really can't put anything. And they've been trying to change the story or change the conversation. But do you think, I guess, similarly, Wolverine? It's the only real thing they've got first party that's coming, I think, in the next little while. Does this dampen their marketing launch? Does it dampen how people are reviewing this game? I don't see this one as much. I think the narrative around the discs is more of a personal piece and like the game preservation piece, but I don't see it affecting Wolverine's score. But I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts.
I would agree with that, John. I think like if we're talking about, and I don't think this is Sony or PlayStation bias on my half, because I am, admittedly
Or
more Sony inclined, let's say. But I feel like the Xbox news and kind of like the zeitgeist around Xbox has the potential to affect review scores more than this Sony
yeah,
shift away from
Mm.
physical discs has the potential
yes,
to
sorry,
reflect review scores.
yeah, and Sony did put this news out the Friday, I think, before the Monday or something to that effect. So
Right,
Yeah,
right,
very clever.
right on top. So yeah, like I mean, reviewers, these top critics are getting codes anyways.
inundated.
They're all
Hmm.
digital. Like this doesn't really affect probably them all that much directly. So I think the any negative feelings won't. I don't know. I don't see it potentially affecting their reviews as much as maybe potentially the Xbox stuff could affect reviews of Xbox games. Yeah, that's just my sense, though.
No, I agree. The only thing, and this is very hyper speculative, that I thought of is like I haven't really paid attention to what the Sony fan sites that also happen to be top critics have said. And I just don't know. Like, 'cause the way I can picture it is like if you're like a Sony focused site, like you're, I don't know, like something called like, I think DualShockers might be a top critic, for example. So Sony first kind of website. Like if your key people also as hyper Sony fans might also be like collectors and physical people, maybe they're in a slightly negative headspace, but I don't think there'd be enough of those in the top critic realm to move the dial. And there are probably still a bunch of fan sites that are just all aboard the whatever Sony says we're gonna agree with. So it'd be pretty minimal if anything.
Well, I guess Pocopia being a game keycard didn't really hurt it.
Yeah, that's a really good
Good point.
example. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
And I know
point.
that in the lead up to the game, there were Nintendo fans that were a bit upset about that, saying, "Oh, it's not a real physical release. It's sort of I'm not going to buy this game." Rah rah rah. But
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Really good example. Yeah. I'll just mention because we didn't talk about it in the news that God of War Laufey, Sony did tweet out, or Santa Monica did tweet out this past week that it will be on physical disc. So for those playing Fantasy Critic, obviously we know it'll be before 2028. So great news. Okay, that is all the news. Thank you for that. Let's see what's been happening in the world of Fantasy Critic for the last little while.
Hype check.
Okay, I'm going to look back at some game scores, a bit of a recap. There's a lot here because we didn't do this in June as we were covering Summer Games Fest. So please stop me if there are games you want to talk about. Otherwise, I will just kind of like run through and point out ones I think are relevant. Also, I'll go kind of slowly. So Phonopolis, which I know is a Fantasy Critic Super League darling, coming in at 81, maybe slightly lower. I don't know if this is one you want to talk about. Maybe slightly lower than people were anticipating. Schrodinger's Cat Burglar, scoring an 87. The other Schrodinger game, 87.
I thought this was a typo when I first scanned it. I was like, that's not what it's called. No,
Nope,
that's another
that's
game,
not
right?
the one.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Coffee Talk Tokyo, 83. Probably a very solid score for this game, Marcus, from where we had initially had this.
Yeah, a little higher than I was expecting for sure.
Right. I'm going to stop on the next one. Zero Parades for Dead Spies, 84.
I'm surprised by this one.
Yeah, we've been famously lower on this than most. I had it counterpicked in one of my leagues. I was hoping it would drop off a little bit more, but you know, the history of this, so we talked about Zeitgeist. They laid off all the Disco Elysium devs and still managed to produce a game that critics liked. So there you go.
Yeah, this is a point speaking against the Zeitgeist and
Exactly.
making that much of a difference, right? So 84 is a really good score, much higher than I was expecting.
Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, following along the Yoshi theme, 80, which is basically all of them score 80. Did either of you, did Brendan, Zach, did either of you play it?
Yeah, I played it. It's I would say it's the closest to Yoshi's Story, and that will mean something to you, or it won't. Of all the Yoshi games.
That's great.
Yep.
Yep. Bubsy 4D 66. I only put this here because many people thought it might break the mold. It did not. Lego Batman 84, probably just around where people had this.
Yeah.
Breaking higher than Lego games, but not to the height that maybe some wanted. Okay, I'll stop on the next one. Schrodinger's Call, hitting a 90. So this is obviously another Fantasy Critic Super League darling that ended up landing. Same,
and it's dropped
publisher.
just in the last couple of days.
It
here.
did, yes. Unfortunately, it's now not the highest scoring game of the year. Can't claim that title anymore. 007 First Light 87.
That's where I sort of expected.
Yeah, very nice to see that. Remake of the greatest role-playing game of all time, 79. Again, this is lower than I think most of us had targeted. It didn't get a lot of reviews, so you know, it's a bit of a mixed bag, but just slightly lower. Mina the Hollower scoring a 91.
Yes.
So, yes, good on Yacht Club Games.
Very good on them. I think a lot of us started getting a bit skeptical for it after all the
Yeah.
delays and I guess talk of the studio being on the brink of having to cut down on staff and things.
Yeah, I never played Shovel Knight, and so I played Mina first, and then as soon as I finished Mina, I went back and played Shovel Knight.
Mm.
Obviously, time will have different impacts on people's perspectives on this and when they first played things, but I actually like Mina more. I really like that game. Um, very, very solid game. Um, okay. Question time scored an 80. Marcus, I know this is one that you had been targeting potentially as maybe slightly higher.
Yeah, I added it in just one league, I think. And yeah, a little lower than I was expecting, hoping for kind of that 82, 83 for that one.
All right. And we'll stop on the next one. Dave the Diver in the Jungle scoring a 92. It
Rip.
is your open critic leader for the year, I think. I don't think anything else is at 92 anymore
No.
because Schrodinger's Call dropped.
Mm-hmm.
So DLC, everybody. I don't know. Anybody have thoughts on this outside of regrets?
I think it really shows that for some DLCs for games like this, you do need to be aware of the fact that some of them can be used as a way to, I guess, rejuvenate the game and to effectively relaunch it, which is effectively what they did with this one. Like they had the short live action, I guess, video that went live, a movie that went live with it, and they were clearly pushing it hard. And I know sometimes in hindsight, it's a lot easier to identify those things and before it releases, but like they, in hindsight, clearly they were pushing this quite hard, and that's what got
Yeah.
it the reviews.
I think everybody got burned last year, like Isaac and
Oh,
Yeah.
I got burnt earlier this year on Little Gator Game DLC, so
Yeah, it happens. I will say this certainly, even though in hindsight it probably should always have been near the top of my list for next year anyway. But Bancho the Chef is now solidly in my. If it looks like it's coming next year, it probably should grab it because I mean, it's given how good the original Dave the Diver did, now this chunky DLC sort of gives credence to believe their next game should also be in that 90s realm. So yeah.
It's a really good point.
That's a very good point.
I hadn't
Yeah.
thought too much about that because it's so different. But yeah, you're right. Like,
Very
yeah.
good point. Adventures of Elliot, 80, lower than I think most had this. I know when we were drafting, I never snagged it in any league, but I had this way higher, maybe mid 80s. This seems like a drop from where people had hoped it would land. Dark Scrolls 65. I just thought I'd mention it because I think this one potentially had some potential. We didn't really talk about it earlier,
I think Doinksoft had a good track record, didn't they?
Yeah,
like Gato Roboto and Gunbrella and stuff.
Yep.
So this is a bit of a fall from grace, unfortunately.
a little bit. Yeah. Deer and Boy scoring a 78. Star Fox remake 83. Maybe more or less where people had it after some of the discussion, the discourse, but actually the game is fantastic if you haven't played it.
Brilliant game, but I think that that was probably the ceiling critic wise.
Yeah, this feels a bit low. I think this is reviewers trying to estimate where it should be placed as a remake of an old game. But everything they've done to this feels higher than A3.
I think part of it is because it's a remake the way it is. Yeah. And I love original Lilac Wars for us in the Power Regions for 64. One of my favorite games on the 64. But the reality is it is a short game. Like, yes, that is I guess alleviated by the fact that it's meant to be replayed over and over and over again. But I think the reality is reviewing a game like that in 2026, a lot of people are going to see some of the flaws in it as flaws. So I think it was never going to get higher.
Also, Nintendo Rhythm Heaven Groove also scoring 83. Also, maybe slightly higher, maybe mistaken on my part, slightly higher than I had thought this would land. Also getting very positive feedback from players and critics alike. The next one, maybe we'll stop briefly. Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resync scoring an 86. This, I think, I don't know how surprising this is given where people have been on this, but I know, Marcus, you were a little bit lower given everything that Assassin's Creed has gone through over the last couple of years and Ubisoft, etc. But this is definitely a beloved entry in the franchise, and they've clearly given it the attention and detail it deserved. Doing pretty well.
It's dropped to 85 since but I did pick this up in one league, John.
Oh, nice.
So I wasn't obviously
Nice.
that down on it. I think that people were talking. We'd had a lot of information about this game for a while now. It's been previewed for a bit, and people that I'd heard talk about it that had an opportunity to play it, talking pretty positively. So I needed something in this league. I can't remember what I swapped out for it. But I picked it up and it performed. So doing well.
Done.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally on this list, Doom the Dark Ages DLC scoring a 90, continuing with the theme of DLC outperforming where we may have thought. I mean, Yote's DLC is still famously unscored, I believe. I don't think it's picked up that third top critic review. So, it's never a done deal, but definitely this one getting positive return. I think 90 is higher than Doom the Dark Ages scored. Am I wrong?
I think you're right.
Oh yeah, no, it is higher.
It's done better than Doom the Dark Age.
There's only 3 or 4 top critic scores, I believe, for this right now.
Yeah.
Like it could fluctuate wildly, but good start.
And I guess that's one of the strengths of picking DLCs is generally like you have to hit that threshold of reviews, but once you do, it's not going to get inundated with many reviewers.
Yeah. Well, and shout out to our friend in our BFAM league, Daryl, who has both Doom the Dark Ages DLC and Dave the Diver DLC. He went all in on DLC and
really, Little Gator game.
He did. He also did have Little Gator game. Yes.
Yes, he struck out on that one.
Yeah. No. Right, that one wasn't necessarily.
That's why it went through. And the reviews it got were high. Like it just needed a few more.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it needed one more top reviewer, and it would have got higher. It's cool.
Yeah, good on him. And then looking ahead, I don't know how much time we're going to spend on this. We pulled. I thought it was interesting to see all of the waiver wire pickups that were made in the Fantasy Critic website after the Nintendo Direct. I think that's probably reflects the most movement with Final Fantasy Resonance getting over 1,000 bids.
I picked it up in one league.
as did I. Had over 20,000 fantasy budget spent there, which I thought was quite notable, and still not the highest. We checked with Steve; we got the confirmation, not the highest, but quite significant.
Donkey Kong was the highest at like over $100,000 spent or something, right? Yeah,
remains the highest to this day. Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Sorry, go ahead.
I just said as it deserves, the Donkey Kong. Sorry.
Yeah. And Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time in that same week. Now it's a little bit more muted, but obviously we had heard it's been spread out over time, right? Because it had been basically leaked. But 928 bids, over 30,000 fantasy critic dollars, so even higher than what people were spending on Resonance. Makes a lot of sense. People were trying to add it. So. That was kind of immediately after the Nintendo Direct, second week out from Summer's Games Fest. There hasn't been, like, if you look at the last couple weeks, the same actors, the same kind of top picks kind of continue to repeat themselves. Not too much distinction where things are. I don't know. Has anything stuck out to anyone here? Is maybe just that time of the year post Summer Game Fest where all the big moves have been made and we're just kind of in a holding period. Anything stand out for you?
Well, one I got on early when they first started showing previews early in the year is Star Wars Zero Company. I'm actually pretty
nice. Yeah.
I'm pretty, I guess, bullish on that one. I think it will do well. And it seems like it's the more it's being shown at some of these shows and videos go out, it does seem to be getting more attention. So I think
Agreed.
I was very lucky. I think I got it on about a $1 bid because it was sort of a quiet time of the year and no one was going for it.
Yeah. I got scared away from that because it didn't have that date. I think I ended up picking it up in one of my leagues though. So.
I guess that's when I made the potential mistake Marcus mentioned earlier in that I love XCOM and games like that. So I'm like, I saw the first preview. I'm like, this looks good. This looks like.
But the difference is XCOM's games score really well. So like, I think you're okay.
If you're an RPG fan, if you're an RPG fan, you're fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Oh, you're hot.
The other one I maybe point out that we talked about briefly was Valor Mortis seems to have rised up over the last couple of weeks in terms of total number of bids and spending dollars. It's probably a reflection of Summer Games of Steam Next Fest. But this past week, week ending July 4th, it was fourth overall in terms of pickups. I mean, it's only 53 bids, but still, it's one that people are kind of going back to. It's getting more play than others. So I put that out there. I don't know what to make of that game. I haven't done a deep dive on outside of just it getting some positive feedback through Steam Next Fest.
We're not going to be talking about it this Pixel Prognostications, but I feel like this game has just a really big range. I think that did it not get pushed back a few weeks? I feel like it was supposed to be releasing like right in that September 24th range where all those games were coming out all at the same time. So that's probably a good thing for it, if I'm correct in that.
I think it is.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I feel like this is like one of those AA games. This is like that Mortal Shell 2, and I could see it doing well, but I could also see this game in the low 70s. I could see it in the high 60s, frankly. Like the range for this game is very big.
I do think that delay might be why it bumped up a bit, which sounds weird, but to me, I kind of look at everything as September as almost still delay and contention worthy. So when a game, whether it's Valor Mortis or Ghost of Tsushima, moves, which kind of reaffirms to me, okay, you're coming out this year, you've moved once, you're probably not going to move again. I think that's a bit of a confidence boost just from a release, point. Because I still think we'll see some September stuff where people go like, we'll see you next year. We're bowing out for now because it's too scary.
Well, that'll do it for Hype Check. Let's predict some scores if we can.
Pixel Prognostications.
Okay, so Pixel Prognostications. I'm gonna write these down as we go. I realize I didn't get this ready the way I wanted to. So there's a few games here. We're going to pick the scores. We're going to go in a bit of concentric circles. You know how it's done. Marcus, I might need you to introduce some of these games because I'm looking at our first one up, which is Incident at Galley House. And I don't think I've got the background needed here to introduce this game. So if you would,
So
please.
I've recently grabbed this. I was late on Incident at Galley House. I shouldn't have been. This has all the makings of a game that's going to score well, in my opinion. So this is a mystery kind of like detective sort of game. It's a reimagining of a game that came out decades ago. Like I think it's a quite old game. Zach, I don't know if you are how familiar you are with it, but the developers have done did last year. The Root Trees Are Dead, which scored I believe an 86. And quite well thought of. So that's kind of the background that I'm aware of on the Incident at Galley House. I don't know if you have anything to add, Zach.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so like the Root Trees Are Dead and the original version of this, I guess, type help very text sort of heavy games versus now this is like a full on, like what you would think of a video game, lots of visuals, puzzles, etc. So I think it'll elevate their, I guess, known skill into a more commercially successful and hopefully critically successful thing. The only thing I was going to call out, bit of controversy on the Fantasy Critic Discord on this one. There's a couple of reviews are already out, but they're not top critics, so they have not made a page for the game, which has meant people have been able to act on that information in either this week's bids or in the Critics Royale, which people are a bit, that's a bit annoying. But anyway, the reviews were quite good. I think they were like a 9 and a 10. So
interesting.
That may indicate
good
where
insider
it could
information.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm going to check that before I make it because I'm going first. So I'm gonna I'm gonna look at that before. Okay, so I guess I should set the tone, or I should set the line. Based on what you just said, 86 plus 9. I'm going to go 87 as my line for this game. Without any information about this game. Marcus, why don't you go next?
Oh, that's a high score.
I'm putting
I
Zach
think
last because he has the most information here.
I'll take the under, but I'm not going very far under. I'll say 80. I'll say 86, actually. Same as Root
Okay,
Trees.
saying it the same. Brendan, you want to go next? We try not to take the same score, but there's 4 of us, so it might get a bit tough, but let us know what you think.
I am going to go 89.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mainly based on, I think, the genre it's in, visual novel, puzzle, is one of those ones that my rule of thumb is generally the reviews they get are very generally, I guess, targeted and from enthusiasts of those genres, and it won't get that many reviews. So I think I'm going high, but I'm not going 90s.
Yeah, well, you've put me in a tough spot, and I regret telling you guys anything at this stage. But no, I think it's made it more interesting. I guess I'll go. Logically, I have this in a league. I'm gonna go and trust that I'm gonna do super well. I'll take the high and go 90, which I don't really
Nice.
believe. I probably would have gone more 88, 87 if I just was doing it on I guess, but I think it has the potential to get there, particularly if it just gets the right mix of reviewers, similar to like a Schrodinger's call originally had, to be more positive.
Yeah. The next one up, hopefully we're all a little bit more familiar with, Dench Attack, ! July 15th. Marcus, you're kicking us off. This is the on rails, I guess. You're playing a train, kick flipping and skateboarding all over the place. But very high, people's minds, very high in terms of where it could land.
Yeah, people have been very excited about this game. It's been at Next Fest for a few times now. People have played the demo. People are very excited. It's coming out only a few days from here as a recording. I'm going to go 85.
Good starting point. Brendan?
I'm going to take the high on this one. I'm going to go 87.
Oh, wow.
I love the look of it, and I like the composer. I know I shouldn't base those things on the score, but I'm going to anyway.
No, that's been the theme. Zach, you're up next.
I'm going to be the opposite in that I think it'll be more not enough substance to the style, so I'm going to go 83.
Nice. And I am going to hope to God that it's high on the high end, so I'm going to take the over on you, Brendan. I'm going to go 88.
Wow.
I know that's really high. I actually think it's going to land around 86 when all is said and done, but I'm really hopeful. I have in 2 in my league, so I'm really hopeful it kind of performs. Next up, The Mermaid Mask, set for July 16th. I know this is another kind of Fantasy Critics Super League game that people are pretty high on. Brendan, you are kicking us off. I don't know if you're familiar with this one. Or
Not really. It's a puzzle game, right?
If it helps, Brendan, it's the
believe so.
Snipper Clips developers.
Ah, yes. Okay. That does help. I will go 82.
Zach, you're up next.
Yeah, I would have gone around there as well, so I'll go 83. I think I'll go the over.
And then I'm up next. So I will go under. I'm hopeful that it goes under. I don't want this to do well. But I think you're probably both more in line with where things are going to stand. I'll just say 80 on the dot.
Yeah. And I'm going to I'll go 81. You're
playing in the middle.
Yeah. We'll try to thread that needle. This dev, their previous game, so this is the second one at least the second one in the series, right? I think there's Tangle Tower, I want to say, something like that. Same style, I think the same character.
It's the sequel, yeah.
Yeah. So it was high 70s, I'm pretty sure. So people seem to be quite excited about Mermaid Mask. We've been waiting for it for a little while now, but I don't think the ceiling is quite as high as at least the previous 2 games we've spoken about.
First, so the July Nintendo game, Splatoon Raiders, July 23rd. Zach, you're kicking us off here.
Well, I mean,
It just had a
gotta do
direct, which we did not talk about.
what's happened the last month? It's been 83. It'll just be another 83.
83. Perfect. I thought it was really good. Yeah, I don't know. My hype for this has grown slightly after the direct, but it's still a bit of a unknown quality. But Splatoon is pretty beloved. I really struggle with this one. Hmm, I'm gonna say 85. That feels high. But you never know. Like I feel like this is a real unknown. I feel like the range here could be quite broad. Marcus.
I'm so out of the Nintendo loop. I don't know. 81. 81.
It's fair.
And Brendan?
I'm very skeptical on this game. I'm going 79.
Okay.
Oh wow, okay. Yeah. I mean, it's possible. Like I feel like all of these are realistic scores. And even higher. I feel like it all is possible. Avatar Legends, July 23rd. I know this has had a bit of discourse. I don't know I got no background on this game outside of people have been talking about it. I don't really like fighting games that much, but I know that there's some hope that it could do relatively well. Because I don't have that much background, I'm probably going to go in the low 80s just to kick us off and set a bit of a line. I will say 83, Marcus.
Well, I am I'm not a fighting game person. I'm not really an anime person. I have no interest in this game personally. And that, it shouldn't bias my guess, but it probably is at least a little bit. I don't think that this game is going to be anything special. I certainly haven't targeted it in any of my leagues. 77.
Brendan, you're up.
So I think, as I mentioned, I have counterpicked this game in a league. And not just based on that, I'm also basing it on the fact that when there have been previous games based on this IP, such as the Legend of Korra game developed by Platinum Games, guess it was by the BT studio, but did not do well. I'm going low on this. I'm going to go 67.
Whoa.
Oh, wow.
That's big.
I think it's going to flop.
That's exciting.
Nice.
I like that spice. I also have a real tough time reading this because I think the fighting game fans seem up and down. We've seen some mixed reception on the network stuff. And probably the biggest blind spot I have, and I think we all have, is there is apparently a story mode, but I couldn't tell you what it looks like because I don't know if they've shown it, which is concerning. So I'm going to go... Have we had 76? I can't remember where we...
No.
I'll go 76. Yeah.
Nice. I feel like I'm being trapped here. This is the in Super League famously because you can put some like trap bids in. Yeah, you can really trap people, which I've been contemplating doing it once you have your roster set. I feel like that's what's happening here. Okay, up next, Halo Campaign Evolved. Marcus.
I worry about this game in terms of like its review scores. Not because I'm personally all that worried, but like I just don't think that it's going to score like exceptionally well. I think I don't know, it's an old game. The original game is old. I know it's beloved, but their remakes, remasters haven't done so well. I'm thinking of the Gears of War remaster from last year. So I don't know. 76.
Wow, that's way lower than I thought you were going to say, but
yeah.
All right, Brendan.
I do acknowledge Marcus's comments on it, and I probably can see how it could go that way. But I'm going to 85. I think it's still Halo.
Okay, Zach.
Yeah, I'm going to go 81 because I think it'll still hold up. I think people are going to comment on the fact that like it doesn't have the multiplayer mode and stuff, so it just is. I just don't think it can reach the heights of the original, in just almost because of that by default. But we'll see.
I'm just going to go with 83. That seems like a good number today. It's where Star Fox remake.
If it's good for Star Fox, it's good for Halo.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one. I think we're also going to have a bit of variability here. Big Walk
Mm.
on August 4th. Brendan, you're kicking us off. I don't envy you here. It's a tough
Oh,
one, I think.
you've made this difficult for me to set the line because this is one that I'm really I've flip flopped on it in that I don't think I've picked it in any league, even though I was
Hmm.
tempted at the start of the year, and it's one of those ones that, like, from what we saw from the Nintendo Direct, I think this could really go anywhere in terms of
Hmm.
who reviews it and how it is reviewed. But I'm going to go 78.
I think that's a good number. Good
Yeah.
starting point.
Zach?
Yeah, so like friend swap games are super hard to pick, I reckon, because they like outperform their critic score from a popularity perspective drastically.
Yep.
Definitely. Yep.
If they're good, I should say. Like I had a look at Peak, and that's like an 83. As a fair comparison. Um, yeah, I'll go 81 again. Because I think I just don't think it's going to hit Peak's like popularity. It might be a bit too complicated with its puzzles or whatnot, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm gonna go 82. I'm with you. I think the low 80s is probably the right spot. I'm hoping that like popularity, yes. I think maybe like I'm hoping it has a little bit more sophistication in terms of mechanics that raises it
Mm,
up. Um, yeah, I was looking. Mecha Chameleon doesn't even have a score yet, and so many of these games launch in early access, whereas this one we don't have that. So that's
mm.
Hmm.
interesting as well. Um, Hopefully, it comes out polished. Marcus, you're capping us off here.
Yeah. Sorry, Brendan. What did you say? 78?
Yeah.
That's the low end right
Yeah.
now.
So I'm gonna take the under on that. I'm gonna go 77. I've cooled on this game as the year has gone on, so I just think it's gonna have a tough time getting review scores, getting I don't know, getting enough people wanting to play it. Like I just think that this type of game, there's so many of them now that it's just I think it's hard for one of them to get a lot of traction.
Quick, I've screwed up our order here, but I'm going to try and keep it in order here. The next up is Beast of Reincarnation, August 4th. And Zach, we have you going first.
Why? This is one of the hardest ones, I reckon. Because it's like it's Game Freak, but it's like mostly not Game Freak. But like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't know. Like, it's just so much like uncharted waters in many ways. My gut feel is though, it's not going to be that great. Like, it's going to be good, but not like a lot of Game Freak's non-Pokemon games end up being pretty mid, with maybe one or two exceptions like Pocket Card Jockey. So I'm going to go 77.
I'm up next, eh? Oh, that's a hard line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm going to say 80. I think your analysis is right. That's probably a little high,
Mm.
but I'm just trying to average out where people are going to land around this game. So I'm going to say 80. Marcus.
I think, been pretty clear that I'm not super keen on this. I just don't think it's not doing anything for me. Again, maybe I'm introducing too much of that personal bias into my prediction here, but I'm gonna go 75.
And Brendan, you're ending us off here.
So this is one that shows that I can be schizophrenic when it comes to my fantasy critic picks because in one league I pick this and in one league I counter picked it and I can't even remember picking it, but I understand what like I'm going to go 72 in that for the reasons Zach mentioned, in that I'm just not sold on these Game Freak ventures that are outside of Pokemon Nintendo's remits. Like,
Mm.
they just historically, when they've gone big budget on things, or sort of like seemingly big budget on things or bigger scale on things, they haven't done well. Like, well, I think it was a 2020 game, but Little Town Hero was a flop and was critically received, I think, in the 60s. And
Yeah, it was.
there's been other games like that they just haven't particularly performed on, like Tembo the Elephant, and even ones that haven't been 3D games just haven't done so well. So I think I could
Yeah.
see it going lower than 70s, but I'm going to go 72 on this one.
Nice. Okay, and the last one, hopefully better scores. Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls coming out August 6th. I have to start here. I'm going to set the line a bit higher because I know that there's a lot of hype around this game. 86. 87. 87. 87.
I need this one to do well because I'm kind of counting on it in at least one league. I think I have it in two actually. So I'm gonna say 88. Arc System
Running
Works,
over.
yeah, like
Yeah.
fighting game. Those games do score well. I think like maybe are people getting tired of Marvel? I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting tired of Marvel.
Like
These
Marvel
fighting games.
Rivals and things like that still do well, so I don't think they are.
Well, Marvel Rivals didn't do as well as I was expecting it to. But I don't know. Some of these fighting games, I think, like they get kind of knocked a little bit by not having enough content right at the start. I don't know if that is the case. I haven't really, frankly, followed. I'm not a fighting game person, so I don't. Outside of Fantasy Critic, I could care less about this game. But 88. Let's say stick with 88.
Okay, Brendan.
This is a difficult one because I'm not. I admire fighting games, but I'm not really into them. But just thinking about the pedigree, what did you go with, John? Again,
87.
So 87 is the
That's the
floor at the
bottom.
moment. Marcus went 88. I'm going to go 85.
Nice.
That
And
works well
Zach?
for me. So I my heart says it's going to actually be decent. Maybe just because I want it to be. But I was looking at Dragon Ball Fighters was 86, and then Guilty Gear Strive was at 86, and then Grand Blue Reverses was 83. But I feel like this feels like it's more in the fighters and Guilty Gear vein, so I'm going to go with that 86 and assume it just stays in the line. Yeah.
Right in the middle. That's tight. Very tight. We're all in the same area on that one. Very cool. All right. Well, that wraps up Pixel Prognostications, and that's the end of the show. I mean, that's it's been a long one. So thank you both for joining us today. There's a lot of news, a lot of ground to cover. So that was Hype Factor episode 23. Thank you to our guests, Brendan and Zach from Blowing Cartridges podcast. Maybe I'll turn it over to you both to plug the show, let people know where they can find you, all the things that you might want to communicate.
Sure. So you can find us at Blowing Cartridges on nearly all podcasting services where you can download your podcasts. We very much would appreciate if you subscribe to our podcast, listen to some of the back catalogue, and stay updated when the next episode goes live, which I'm sure will happen at some point in the next couple of months, Zach. But we have over a back catalogue of about 80 also episodes on a whole range of topics. As we mentioned at the start, both Jon and Marcus have been on in the past, so those would be good episodes for your listeners to have a look at. We did do an episode on Fantasy Critic many years ago, one of our early episodes. So that's also a good one to start with as well. And you can find us on most social media platforms at either, I think the Blue Sky is Blowing Cartridges at .bsky. We're at BlowCartPod on most other ones as well. And you can find me at Tamazoid. Zach's always at Eggerino on most social media as well. Zach, did I miss anything?
No, but I would say, even as Brendan said, even if we haven't put an episode out recently and all the hot current topics, all of them have kind of also been covered before, like the rising game prices or physical media and why it's important. So, just go back to the ones we recorded
and Microsoft laying off people.
Yeah. I'm sure we've done that before as well. And, if anything, it's interesting to see how little has changed, or sometimes maybe what has changed, even though the issue remains pertinent. So thank you again for inviting us on, though, guys. Really enjoyed it.
Excellent. Okay, Marcus, where can people find you?
Yeah, no, just thanks again, Zach and Brendan. This has been a blast. We'll have to do it again sometime for sure. You can find me on Blue Sky at Marcus O'Neill 79, or you can also find me on the other two podcasts that I do, Tiny Game Chronicles, which we do every other week, where me and my good friend Michael discuss a short, tiny game usually a game that takes about 5 hours or less to complete. And then the other podcast that I do is officially a monthly show, but it tends to release more episodes than every month it would seem. And that is Brothers from Another Mothership that we do with John and I's good friends, Ron, Matt, and Quag. And we cover all sorts of gaming related topics.
And as for me, you can find me at John32 on Blue Sky, Discord, etc. Hype Factor also on Blue Sky and X, or you can engage with us there. But listen to all the things. Go listen to Blowing Cartridges. Go listen to BFAM and Tiny Games Chronicles. Go listen to Hype Factor. Give everybody positive 5-star reviews when you're doing so. It's always very helpful and much appreciated by everybody involved. A great way for people to be able to find us. So thank you for listening. Thank you for that. And until next time, everybody, get hyped.
Remember, the information provided is for entertainment purposes only. Hype Factor does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or reliability of any advice or predictions offered. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you are solely responsible for any decisions you make based on the information provided. We strongly encourage you to fantasy critic responsibly. And remember, this is just a game, and in no way impacts your status as a gamer. Hype Factor cannot be held responsible for any damages resulting from bad picks, drops, or overall Fs on your season.